Hello and welcome to today's 10-minute episode of The Listening Lounge. My name is Nick Day, CEO of 𝐨𝐥𝐤𝐤 Recruitment Group, specialist payroll and HR recruiters.
We're going to be exploring a really exciting subject. It's called the science of a high-performing workplace. I'm joined by Campbell, who is an employee experience scientist at Qualtrics. What made you decide to work in this particular space? What was your journey to becoming a people scientist? I mean, many people won't even know what that is.
I didn't know what it was until I was in my late 20s and onto my second career. I grew up incredibly poor, and I left my parents' house at 18 with no job skills to speak of, except for maybe the ability to talk. And even that's questionable. But after a short period of time, I got involved in mortgage banking. And in my early 20s, I was the youngest wholesale subprime account executive to work for a large investment banking firm. And I was in my early 20s making more money than I thought was even possible. And I didn't even have a college degree. And when the financial crisis happened, I was at the eye of the storm. And it completely wiped me out. And it made me go on a journey of kind of self-evaluation to say like, okay, well, that thing that I thought I was going to be doing for the rest of my life no longer exists as a career, really. Sure. How do I pivot and make sense of what I'm doing now? And I read just about every book on philosophy, psychology, career calling that you could possibly think of. And I came across this book by a Hungarian-born psychologist by the name of 𝐒𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐤 wrote a book called Flow.
Okay. And
you're probably familiar with the concept of flow. It's all about being completely absorbed in what you're doing in the moment. You just lose your sense of self because you're so engrossed in the activity. A real hallmark sign of flow is when it feels like just a few minutes have passed, but it's actually been several hours. Sure. You forget to do things like eat, use the restroom, drink water, right? You just get so engrossed in what you're doing. Engineers experience this. You've probably experienced this in a podcast where you're like, oh wait, what happened?
100%.
Yeah. Athletes call it being in the zone. Anyway, so I read this book and I was like, okay, I have to figure out how I can find a career that will allow me to experience flow. Because I was making a whole lot of money in the mortgage business, but I really wasn't that fulfilled or happy. I was actually pretty miserable despite all that. And I wanted to find some sort of sense of engagement in the next thing that I did because, well, that didn't work out. I'm not going to be the 25-year-old millionaire that I thought I was going to be. So I have to kind of repivot and do some other things. And 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐤's theory, and he's demonstrated this, really goes back to you experience flow. And I'm kind of doing this hand motion. I don't know the right way, but when you're at that perfect intersection or perfect balance between challenge and skill. So it's not about doing something so hard that you experience anxiety or so easy that you experience boredom. It's about doing something very challenging, but you're very well equipped to meet that challenge.
Sure.
And that really all goes back to your personal disposition and your natural strengths. So I took every psychometric assessment that was out there, some that are less valid now that I've actually worked in this space, but I didn't know. I did the Myers-Briggs, the Strengths Finder, everything that you could possibly imagine until I eventually found this place called the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation, and they put me through a battery of tests over a set of 2 days. And at the end of all these tests, and like they tested my musical ability, my spatial reasoning, the ability to make beats, do art, verbal processing, language acquisition, like everything that you could possibly imagine. And at the end of it, it was determined that I should either be a business consultant or a psychologist.
Okay.
And I'd never even heard of people science, never even heard of organizational psychology, but I thought, there's got to be something that combines both of these disciplines. Turns out there is. It's called organizational psychology. And there's a university about an hour away from where I grew up that had a master's and a PhD program in this discipline. So I sent away for the brochure, not thinking much of it, but the brochure gets back to me. And the person that started that particular program was 𝐒𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐤.
About to say, the author of Flow. It had to be. Yeah. Nice. So you were sold at that point, right? 100% in.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, the clouds parted and the sun shined through, and I felt like it was the way for me to go.
The HR and L&D leaders that are going to be questioning then, if they listen to this now and then hopefully they're immersed, maybe this is speeding fast for them. How do they measure the impact and their return on investment on the kind of L&D programs that they're implementing? If we're not all about score setting and there's other ways of doing it, how can they measure that impact? Or how would you recommend to measure it?
Well, I think the first thing is to differentiate between outputs and outcomes.
Okay.
So my co-concentration, in addition to organizational psychology, is program evaluation. So that world came from social programs, nonprofits that are trying to make some sort of an impact in the world. And they don't have the same market mechanisms that businesses do. So I have to figure out something else to measure, like, are we actually making a positive difference? Yeah, I think when it comes to a lot of this stuff, what are you really after? If you're talking about a return on investment, what's the return that you want? How do you want people to be changed as a result of your efforts? And how will that change impact your business priorities? Not always necessarily revenue or profitability or any of those things, although those are great things.
Yeah.
There's especially with just the sea change that's happening in the paradigm shift, there are other business priorities that are important to you. What are those business priorities? Is it a sense of belonging? Is it well-being within the workplace? All important outcomes that may or may not impact the positive line, the bottom line positively, but it's still something that is important to measure for its own sake. So I think that really start with the why. Start with what's the outcome, the real outcome that you're ultimately after, and then what are the logical connections between the different activities that you're going to be doing, the proximal change that you want that person to undergo, and then what's the ultimate impact of that change that you see them going through.
What, in your view, is the role of an HR or L&D professional in relation to employee engagement? How can they drive employee engagement? How should they be tracking employee engagement? And why, as an employee engagement sort of scientist as you are, why is this so important that this sits within the world of HR and L&D to help drive that forward?
I love that question. I think the role is evolving, and the role of HR in that space is to become more of a facilitator and a coach and an orchestrator rather than the doer. Too often, employee engagement has been seen as an HR thing, when really it's an everybody thing. It's not extra work that managers do on top of their quote unquote real work. It's fundamental to getting the real work done, right?
Yeah.
If you think about engagement as being how motivated people are toward their work, how committed they are toward their organization, and the sense of pride and emotional connection they have toward their work and the place that they work. That's the crux of what it means to lead people. Everything that you have within your experience is really driving toward that degree to which people have that extra discretionary effort. They're committed, they want to stay, and they give that extra piece of themselves toward their work and toward the organization that they work for. And that's not something that is only within the HR department. That happens day in and day out. The way work gets done, the people that everyone works with, the manager that they have, the IT systems that they work with, the different processes, and so HR can't be in all those places, but they can be a guide and a Sherpa and a coach and someone who turns to the manager and says, it's not about getting to the summit, it's about enjoying this hike, it's about enjoying this trek, and
taking everyone with us,
connecting the dots between business outcomes and these silly surveys that we do.
Kevin Campbell, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today to talk about the world of science, the workplace, HR, L&D programs, and more. I look forward to bringing the next episode to you all again real soon. Thank you.